Ask Reddit, how did somebody you know ruin their life in one day? My dad used a dirty needle while doing drugs and got HIV. In 2008, he told us he was living with AIDS because of that one day. We have helped pay for the meds or his bills, because he paid for his meds and didn't have the money, ever since. Last summer, he got COVID, and when the doc was talking to my sister on the phone, she asked what special treatment he would need to have due to having AIDS. His doctor of 20 years said, "What? He doesn't have AIDS." We haven't talked to him since. Edit for clarification. At the time, he said he had been living with HIV for years and that it developed into AIDS for not treating it. I was 16 and dumb. No, I didn't sit down and interrogate my father for hours to make sure he wasn't lying. How dare I not know right? He gave permission to the doctor to speak to my sister about his medical treatment. No laws broken. The doctor clarified. It wasn't a 2-minute conversation. He had been seeing my dad as a patient for 20 years and knew his medical history. He was as upset as we were that he lied. After finding out, me and my sister confronted him and he admitted to it all. He never had HIV or AIDS. It was all a lie. Tried to end themselves by jumping off a bridge, survived, paralyzed from neck down. My daughter's middle school teacher exchanged explicit photos with a 14-year-old on Discord across state lines. He got drunk, got in his car, drove 90 miles per hour, missed a red light, and ended my niece and 3 other people. He's been in prison since 2009 and still has 6 years to go, as he plead out to 4 counts of manslaughter. More like a day horribly altered my life. I was a teacher and coach. For a field trip, the principal could not afford 2 buses. So I had to walk about 10 girls to the field trip location and back to school, while the one bus was filled with the rest of the junior high students and faculty. About a mile each way. I chose the girls of my team because they would listen to me outdoors, unlike lots of middle school kids. While crossing the street in the crosswalk, with the walk signal in our favor. All the kids went first, and like girls they're clumped together and chatting while walking. I noticed a woman made a left turn into our crosswalk and never saw us as she tried to accelerate to beat an oncoming car. I knew she was going to run right through the girls. I pushed the kids forward very forcefully. Most of the girls fell onto the pavement in front of other vehicles waiting at their red light. They were badly scraped up, like road rash from me pushing them. But no hospitals or doctors were needed for their scrapes. I don't remember the impact. I remember seeing a Pontiac symbol between the headlights. I came to, and I was in a whole different lane, and facing where I had just come from. I could not get up. They say my body went up the car, and off the driver's side, tearing the side mirror off the car and breaking her windshield. Horror and sobbing from my student athletes. The girls raised me onto a backboard when the ambulance came, which must have been traumatic. Now, 20 years later, I am still an ambulatory wheelchair user. Can't teach or coach. Can't work at a desk. I have chronic pain. Yes, my life can be really sucky, but I would not change what I did that day. When I get low emotionally from all my limitations, I remember those girls. I watched them go to college, get married, grow into mothers, and hold impressive jobs in their fields. And when they show a photo on Facebook of their happy moment, it recharges me to know they are safe, healthy, and happy. And it reaffirms my decision to save them from harm. A friend of my parents was a good family man who loved his family. One day he was playing with his toddler and was playfully tossing her on the bed. She would get back up giggling and he would toss her again. In one of the tosses, he threw her a bit too far and she hit a bedpost. She lived, but became bedbound, unable to even talk. Not quite vegetable, but close. He went to jail on child abuse. Lost his wife, his job, and his little girl would never be the same. The guilt was so much, he ended it as soon as he could. Dude, several years our junior, on the fringe of the friend group, was spiraling into depression. Decided to end it with a shotgun. Didn't get the angle right. Blew his jaw and face off. Literally. It's not for nothing that I've said ever since, there are worse things than dying. A 19-year-old guy in Sydney ate a slug for a dare. Got rat lungworm disease. Went into a coma for 18 months, woke up a vegetable confined to wheelchair, needing 24-hour care. Passed away about 10 years later. From eating a single slug. A week ago, my little sister slipped on the ice getting out of her car and hit her head. She didn't think much of it when she had a pounding headache later, figuring she just whacked herself good. Her friend told her to just sit down and take it easy until she started slurring her words roughly 10 hours after the fall. They called an ambulance for her, but she was going into cardiac arrest. Turns out she'd stopped taking her blood thinners she was supposed to be on for clotting issues. The headache wasn't the fall, it was the clot in her leg cutting off blood to the brain. At the age of 26, she never recovered and leaves behind a 4-year-old and 2-year-old. Kid down the street had his best friend over, and his friend, being a 12 to 13-year-old boy, was being a total D-head. Kid picks up a shotgun his brother left lying around in the dining room and aimed at friend. Friend taunted him. Kid pulled the trigger and filled his friend's head full of buckshot. 2 families instantly devastated. Kid went to jail. I occasionally see the friend when I go out for a walk. He's a grown-up now, but is intellectually maybe 4 to 5 years old, and will be taken care of by family for the rest of his life. He ate dinner alone, choked and passed away. Friend's son was with his recently engaged fiancée who had a serious nut allergy. They were driving not far from Bendigo. They stopped off at a cafe to buy sandwiches. The woman running the cafe assured them there were no nuts anywhere near the sandwiches, so they bought them, then went on their way. Driving out away from town, she was nibbling on the sandwiches when she struggled to breathe. He stopped the car, got out, figured what was going on, went to the back of the car to get her EpiPen, which he struggled to find, but by the time he did find it, she passed away. A couple of weeks after the funeral, he got in his car, drove it back to the stretch of roadside where she passed, put his foot down on the accelerator and deliberately aimed his car at a power pole. He'd left his mom a note. Stood in the wrong place. He was stood in a bar minding his own business, and a fight broke out. He caught an accidental blow to the back of the head and caught his head on a wall on the way down. He never woke up. Middle management type man where I used to work, came into the office every other day. He was known to be a stand-up guy, good family man, even a good boss, as good as it gets when it comes to management at least. He got caught having intercourse with the new hire. Lost his job, his marriage, and his kids stopped talking to him. That was 2 years ago. Last news I got, he's living in a studio apartment with a mattress on the floor, and already spent half his savings on alcohol. A local dude was sucking the toes of his 14-year-old stepdaughter while she slept. She was awake, but too scared to say anything. Mom eventually found out and SHT hit the fan. Guy I knew, married and with 2 kids. He'd been adopted as a baby and reconnected with his bio family, including his 10-year-old sister who he was excited to get to know. She came to visit him planning to spend a few weeks with his family. Her first day there, he tried to molest her. She got away from him, ran to the bathroom and called 911. He lost his job, most of his friends, and, we thought at the time, his wife. She took him back when he got out of prison, though. Some kid in our senior year of high school pulled the fire alarm every day. He was getting away with it for a while. The school had town officials and the chief of the fire department and police come in and talk about the dangers. The town would send trucks and be without them if there was another emergency. None of that worked. When they offered a reward, the kid's friends ratted him out. His family had to pay for all those calls. He was expelled from school and didn't graduate. Me. I didn't believe my mom. She said she'd kick me out at 18, so I never bothered to get a part-time job to save money. My 18th birthday came around, and I said nope to her when she asked if I'd gotten a job or had living arrangements figured out. The next day, I came home from a friend's place to a laundry basket of clothing at the door. She drove me to a homeless shelter and never let me come back home. A coworker of mine, who had a very successful management-level job at a big corporation, paralyzed themselves from the waist down after trying to climb up a rain pipe on a drunken dare. They couldn't work for almost a year, returned in a very junior position, and were basically making minimum wage. Their life savings disappeared in a couple of months despite them being amazing at saving, and last I saw them, they were made redundant when COVID hit. No idea what their situation is now. Went to college with a dude, went to a party, caught him with something in his hand and offering to bartend so the host could mingle. I asked him what was up. He mentioned really wanting to hook up with a girl in his class, but she was engaged. I told him to let that crap go and go jack off or something instead of making an absolutely beyond stupid decision. Told the girl, she told me I was an ugly fat freshman. True, I was overweight, but I was trying to warn her not be her best buddy, and to leave her alone. She dumped her drink on me, and I left the party. He roofied her for like 3 days straight and ped her several times. He didn't wear a condom. She got pregnant. Her fiancé called off the marriage and said that was one of his friends who he had known his whole life, the son of his pastor, and she was just a rear. KY, she couldn't get an abortion without money/ride and went to her parents. Both evangelicals. One shotgun wedding to her rapst later, and she gave birth to her son. Her son went to live with the grandparents due to bruises and other abuse. Her husband had her checked into Stoner Creek, local psychiatric facility, due to suicidal ideation. She ended herself on the first day out. Her rapst is now dating her younger sister, despite being nearly 12 years her senior, and everyone at my old church comments about how it was such a shame she couldn't get her SHT together and be happy to have a family, but thank goodness her sister has more sense. Younger sister has basically adopted her nephew as her own son. Everyone pretends the RPE was all the older sister's fault. I don't go to church anymore, and the campus police wouldn't believe me. We were on Molly, and he told us he was gonna finally call his parents, and tell them he was gay. We strongly advised him against it, told him he should wait until he is done with college, but he did it, and they reacted horribly. His dad brutally assaulted him when he got home and they kicked him out of the house. This was the 90s when that was not uncommon at all, unfortunately. He was couch surfing and staying in shelters, and he just spiraled downward into drugs to cope with his situation. He loved his family, and they viewed him as some kind of evil monster, apparently, and it just destroyed him. He ended up KLLNG himself some years later after a stint in prison. Before my time, an employee at an old job went to a job interview somewhere else, radically misinterpreted it, drove straight back to his office, went full Jerry Maguire, stormed out, called up the hiring manager at the other company, saying he could start right away. The hiring manager said a mistake had been made in interviewing him, as a candidate had already been given an offer letter the day before, and so the opening had been filled. He tried begging for his old job back, but he got laughed out. A coworker told me that this guy's marriage was already on the ropes. But when his wife found out he rage quit without having something new lined up, she moved out the same day and filed for divorce 2 or 3 months later. Thank you for watching. Do you have a story of anyone ruining their life within a day? Until next time, friend, remember to stay hydrated.